Hello friends, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Manish Shrestha, working as Assistant Professor at Haryana School of Business, GJ University of Science and Technology, Hisar. Today, we are going to discuss about the topic executive compensation. Before starting the discussion, let's have a look at the contents. The discussion will start with the introduction of the topic, followed by theories of compensation, executive compensation, principles of executive compensation, factors affecting executive compensation and organizational strategies. Then it will follow the executive compensation models and the summary. After completing this module, the students will be able to understand what is executive compensation, what are its principles, factors affecting executive compensation models. Compensation refers to a whole range of financial and non-financial rewards to employees against the services rendered by them. All forms of employee compensation constitute a large chunk of operating costs. Organizations need to develop a trade-off between costs, attractive compensation, and employee retention. On the other hand, compensation has to be affordable to the organization. Compensation, along with various fringe benefits, should be attractive enough to attract as well as to retain skilled, qualified, and trained employees. Majorly, all management and union disputes are directly or indirectly related to compensation. If compensation is uncompetitive and unattractive, employee retention will be a serious issue. So, employee compensation indirectly plays a vital role in the growth and development of the organization. Wages, salary, and compensation are three terms that are often mixed up in terms of their meaning or interpretation. Wage is the remuneration to workers that is paid hourly, weekly, or piece production basis. Salary is mostly referred to remuneration that is paid on monthly basis to white-collared employees, including management personnel. Compensation is a much wider term that covers in its scope lot many things other than monetary remuneration like incentives, fringe benefits, perquisites, etc. Theories of compensation. There are various theories of compensation like economic theory and behavior theory. Economic theories, the dictionary meaning of compensation is simply reward or reimbursement or return. In economic terms, it means exchange between employer and employee for the task performed by the latter. The employer has the liberty to pay reward compensation to its employees in financial as well as non-financial form in any proportion as mutually arranged between the employer and the employee. In a narrow sense, compensation is the amount paid by the employer to the employee for the services rendered by him for production of goods and services. Thus, the economic aspect of compensation is actually most important, for which theories have been propounded by various thinkers. Let's discuss various economic theories. Labor market theory. It suggests that compensation, like any other price, is determined by the forces of demand and supply. The employer has to understand his requirement related to number and type of employees at a particular compensation level. The employer will continue engaging a specific type of employee till the compensation is equal to the marginal productivity. Employees, on the other hand, will be available for the employment till some another recruiter has something better to offer to him, or till he is able to justify his contentment levels in the same job. Subsistence theory, or the iron law of wages, postulates that labor is compensated for the work done by them so that they can survive. The theory also assumes that if compensation increases beyond the survival level, the employee will enhance his family by reproducing more, as now he is able to support a larger family. As the number of individuals to be employed increases, that is, supply of labor increases, with a specified amount of employment available, compensation would decline. If compensation fall below survival levels, employees and their family would die of malnutrition or hunger. Resultantly, supply of labor will decrease and compensation level will increase. The theory concludes that in the long run, compensation tends to be minimum. The wage fund theory, as proposed by Smith, proposes that compensation is paid out of a fund that is created to house the surplus wealth with the employer or the capitalist, which is a result of his retained earnings. This surplus wealth is used to engage employees to perform different tasks. In case of larger funds, compensation will be high as more funds would be available for disbursement, and if funds are less, then compensation just enough for survival would be paid. Surplus value theory says that labor is treated as a commodity that is purchased on payment of a price. Although, while determining the price of any product, labor cost is significantly considered, but the labor is paid very less as compared to the time spent by them in manufacturing of a product. The surplus thus goes to the surplus fund. Residual claimant theory identifies 4 factors of production, that is land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. The amount of residual value after payment to all factors except labor is called compensation. This also implies that all factors of production are important except labor. That is why labor is the residual claimant. Theory of marginal productivity states that compensation is the estimate made by the entrepreneur about the value created by the marginal employee. Therefore, this theory also suggests that compensation depends on demand and supply of the workflows. The bargaining theory proposed that compensation is totally dependent on the bargaining power of employees, trade unions, and the employer. If the trade union is stronger than the employer, compensation will tend to be higher, and if employer is powerful and well established, the compensation will be low. Hence, compensation depends on the bargaining capacities of the parties involved. The limitation with these economic theories is that they assume labor market to be perfectly competitive and employees are absolutely free to move in and out of the markets. This practically seems to be almost impossible. Economic theories are based on the most primitive format of compensation and its management. Here, it is assumed that an individual is well aware about all his self-interests being fulfilled. These theories are criticized on following grounds. That is, the economic theories of compensation management are away from reality as they assume free entry and exit of employees, which is practically impossible. Economic theories also assume completely competitive labor market where uniform compensation is practiced, which again is a myth. Behavioral theory of compensation states that compensation is something and largely influences human behavior. For the organization, the contribution of the employee is important for the attainment of its goals in support of its vision and mission. For an employee, compensation affects his motivation, commitment, and performance. These intangible, immeasurable aspects pose a threat to economic theories. These human traits significantly impact the employer as well as employee's perception towards compensation. Behavioral theories conceptualize compensation as a tool to create and imbibe emotions in an employee, suggesting him that the job is too good to be lost. The major behavioral theories are put forward by various experts can be summarized as: behavioral theories conceptualize compensation as a tool to create and imbibe emotions in an employee, suggesting him that the job is too good to be lost. The major behavioral theories put forward by various experts can be summarized as follows. The first one is acceptance of compensation. The general image and name of the organization and amount of compensation are two significant deciding factors that govern the employee's intention to work in that organization. Although the compensation is directly proportionate to the contribution made by the employee towards the organizational goals. So, the compensation, apart from just providing livelihood, is the major reason of continuance or discontinuance from the organization. Organizations have to actually make sure that the employees are contented in terms of all financial as well as non-financial rewards. It is a vicious circle. As soon as the satisfaction level of employee lowers, he searches for new alternatives with high rewards. As per the general human tendency, for a short span of time, individual is satisfied, but gradually his aspirations touch newer heights and gain his satisfaction level lowers. Hence, compensation level acceptance is very important to sustain the employee. Internal compensation structure of an organization is dependent on multiple factors, many of which are not economic in nature. These include psychology of the management, social recognition associated with the job, social norms and customs prevalent in the particular society, the intention of maintaining consistency in compensations, the span of control, and the requirement of specialized labor. This theory thus tries to emphasize that compensation is internally created and managed concept that affects a whole lot of other factors. Wage and motivators. Compensation as a layman can understood as the amount of money an individual earns from his job. Compensation is thus an instrument to fulfill one's needs. But actually, every individual has some expectations and aspirations from his life. These aspirations motivate him to enhance his compensation and hence his earnings. This behavioral aspect of one's personality needs increments, bonuses, commissions, etc. to motivate him. Inter and intra-industry compensation differentials. Compensation differentials are a common feature. Employees with similar skill sets and efficiency levels, if hired in a perfect market, would receive identical compensation equilibrium. But what actually exists is imperfect competition. So, compensation differentials largely exist on account of inter and intra-industry differences. Compensation within the industry is varied just as across industries. The reason for compensation differentials within the industry may be due to nature of industry technology, competencies, skill sets, sector, competition strategy, business environment, and quality of workforce. Any remuneration paid to top rank executives is known as executive compensation. In other words, it is the reward given to the senior executives such as managing director, executive chairman, CEO, chairman, director, CTO, and chief financial officers, etc., for the expert services rendered by them to the organization. Generally, executive compensation includes base compensation, performance linked compensation, and some other terminal benefits. Base compensation generally includes salaries, allowances, medical and insurance benefits, while performance-linked compensation includes bonus, incentive, deferred compensation, stock option, etc. These are given to employees based on some calculation of performance. Perquisites include personal staff, transport facility, residence, membership of club, gym, professional bodies, exclusive car parks, paid holidays, etc. Other benefits may include retirement benefits. Different internal and external factors make executive compensation a challenging task for the organization. At the internal level, determination of executive compensation is made by compensation committee, which consists of board of directors, while at the external level, various factors like government rules and regulations, market rate for managerial talent, etc. govern the executive compensation. Therefore, the present and future success of the organization is directly related with the organizational ability to understand these determinants of compensation policy and executive compensation. Executive compensation is critical for the long-time interest of shareholders and achievement must of organizational goals and objectives successfully. Thus, it must be based on certain sound principles. These principles are principle of attraction and retention. Human resources are one of the most vital resources of the organization. Therefore, executive compensation policy of the organization should be able to attract and retain talented individuals within the organization. This not only enables an organization to compete in the marketplace, but also helps in survival, growth and success of the organization, because the executives are the drivers of the organization. Protection of shareholders' interest. For upholding and protecting shareholders' interest, executive compensation must be linked with the organizational performance. Once it is done, the top executives shall act in the best interest of the organization, as their own growth and prosperity is directly related with the organizational success. Thus, the interest of shareholders will be protected. Performance-based compensation. When executive compensation is linked with the performance of an employee, they will more likely to work for the effectiveness of organization by achieving the targeted objectives. The profitability of organization will exemplify and will result in expansion of market share, new products launches, export performances, etc. When an executive is able to achieve successfully the performance objectives, he should be paid well, otherwise his compensation should be reduced. Effective compensation committee. The persons in the compensation committee should be independent in fact and conduct both. The Committee for Executive Compensation Settlement should exercise independent judgment free from any relationship or influence that could adversely affect their decision. This will help in bringing transparency and validity of decisions taken by committee in respect of setting executive compensation. Compliance of law. The executive compensation program should be timely reviewed by compensation committee to ensure their compliance with applicable laws and regulations. Transparent disclosure. Last but not the least, the executive compensation of an organization should have transparent disclosure. The organization should provide complete, accurate and timely disclosures related to all the elements of executive compensation and the factors associated with it. There are different norms followed by different countries for executive compensation. However, the disclosures should be true and speak facts. The success of any organization depends upon the employees, especially at the top level, which in turn depends upon the compensation policy. Therefore, it is very essential to have efficient executive compensation system. The factors affecting executive compensation are changing nature of work. The world is so dynamic that the way work is organized and managed is constantly changing. The change is due to the technological breakthrough and global competition. The world demands new compensation practices for executives who are at the helm of affairs of an organization. They are the drivers of shareholders' wealth. The next factor is investors' confidence. The market price and perceived value of an organization is highly affected by corporate image and governance. Major companies such as Enron have highlighted the need for effective corporate governance in executive compensation. Members of the committees who make compensation policy decisions are under limelight and are very important to restore investors' confidence in executives. Executive benchmarking. The committees of compensation rely on benchmarks to ascertain the going role of executive compensation. The organization engages the services of compensation consultants to benchmark with the market rate. However, the care should be taken that the compensation consultant not engaged in other assignment with organization has fair credibility in the market. It is directly under control of compensation committee. Awareness of legal obligation and regulation on executive compensation is a must for effective benchmarking. Attracting and retaining high performance executives. There is a high need for competitiveness in attracting and retaining talented executives with the changes in nature of workplace. Globalization, diversification, telecommunity, and flexible time. Now the organization can no longer provide single reward solution. Successful organizations are designed the way that link compensation to business performance. Another factor is fostering right executive behavior. The investment in executive offers greater potential than any other. Compensation is longest expenditure of most of the organization and executive compensation forms major part for this. Thus, organization maintains compensation strategy. The cost of executive turnover may be crippling for an organization and simultaneously executive compensation system should drive correct executive behavior that can provide governance questions, media and stakeholder security. A poorly governed organization, irrespective of its size, could not sustain for long. A compensation policy are frequent question and implications for directors, board committees, managers, investment analysts, regulation and the likes have been erroneous. Increasing vital role as being played by non-executive directors and compensation committees. Penalties are imposed on those organizations which fail to comply with the stock listing requirement. Hence, governance is must. How executive compensation can be related to the organizational strategy or organizational performance is a debatable issue. It is well known fact that alignment of work with business strategy is the prior task of any organization. Therefore, organization needs to design executive compensation to reward the work of top management, which will then by default fulfillment of organizational strategy. Designing executive compensation in the era of economic uncertainty is very difficult task. Some of the action plans to meet the strategic intent while maintaining a balance between executive compensation and organizational objectives are: while identifying vendors, cost of compensation for health and welfare should be optimized. Restructuring the deferral components of compensation by rationalizing the compensation budget. Cost of retirement benefits using funded pension assets through stock buildup should be optimized. And finally, identify wasteful human resource cost by reviewing the terms of contract. Executive compensation models of an organization can be of two types, namely optimal contracting and managerial power. Organizations enter into employment contracts with executives to minimize agency cost. The basic aim for such contract is to maximize the net economic value to shareholders. The efficiency of any individual employment contract is very difficult to measure, and therefore, the efficiency of executive compensation are based on models of employment contract and its judgment. The model of executive compensation is optimal contracting model. Under this model, executive compensation package is specifically designed to reduce agency cost. In this model, common contractual terms such as option grants, corporate loans, and reverence agreements are explained as owners' attempts to overcome the tendency of executive to be risk averse, to shirk, to build empires, and to prefer diversified investments. In other words, optimal contracting predicts that executive compensation packages are generally those one which are the results of bargaining within labor and executive. Managerial power. This model is based on the assumption that compensation agreements between organization and executive systematically deviate from efficient results achieved by executives. Here, compensation contracts are not taken as attempt to reduce agency cost, rather they are believed as agency cost. Here, compensation is set by compensation committee with the input of consultant of specific industry. To summarize the discussion, any remuneration paid to top rank executives is known as executive compensation. In other words, it is the reward given to the senior executives such as managing director, executive chairman, CEO, chairman, directors, CTOs, chief financial officer, etc. for the expert services rendered by them to the organization. Generally, executive compensation includes base compensation, performance-linked compensation, and some other terminal benefits. Base compensation includes salaries, allowances, medical insurance benefits, while performance-linked compensation includes bonus, incentives, deferred compensation, stock option, etc., which are given to employees based on same calculation or proportion of performance. Perquisites include personal staff, transport facility, residence, membership of club or gym, professional bodies, exclusive car parking, etc. Other benefits may include retirement benefits. Different internal and external factors make executive compensation a challenging task for the organization. At the internal level, determination of executive compensation is made by compensation committee, which consists of board of directors, while at external level, various factors like government rules and regulations, market rate for managerial talent, etc., govern the executive compensation. Therefore, the present and future success of the organization is directly related with organizational ability to understand these determinations of compensation policy and executive compensation. Happy learning!